Okay, this week I'm going to make some stuffed cabbage rolls. For this, one of the things we need to do is we need to separate the cabbage leaves, and then we'll boil them to get them so they'll bend without cracking. So I'm going to try first to see if I can. Sometimes you can't get them to peel off without breaking too much, but I'm going to try and see if I can kind of take the core out and then pull off the outer leaves. You don't want to use the inner leaves, they're a little too small. So depending on how much you make, you'll either need 1 or 2 heads of cabbage. So it looks pretty good. So I'm going to try and see how well this is coming off. I might get a few, but I think as I get further down I'm going to get more resistance. It's starting to tear a little bit. So what you can do, what I'm going to do is I'll move the stove and you can boil the head of cabbage for a few minutes. That'll start to cook the leaves, which we're going to do anyway, and should help them come off of the head of cabbage better without tearing. While the water is heating up, I'm going to cut up some onions because we need to saute some onions for the filling. I will leave that there and get that measured out. Alright, in the back here, I'm just going to place the head of cabbage in the water. It will float a bit, that's fine. In the front here, I've got a little bit of room, it's kind of tight, but I'm going to try to saute the onions here, just to save some time. So we need 1 ounce of oil or butter. I'll just periodically flip that, and I'm going to put a timer on here for 4 minutes, and then see where we're at with that. Because we'll still need to pull the leaves off and let them cool while we finish the rest of this. So the main goal with these onions is we want to saute these until they soften. They'll start to go translucent. Okay, it makes it so you're not going to have chunks that haven't cooked through in the final product. this is probably good for the onions, and it's almost time to check on that cabbage. So you just transfer this back into the same bowl. And we can check on this cabbage. I'm going to pull it out and put it in this smaller bowl just so that it can cool off. And drain a bit. You can see the leaves are coming off better already. Okay, so you can see this far apart. So I'm going to pull this here and just check if I can get these off. Yep, they look cooked enough for what we need, and they're coming off nicely. So just have to get them off in order, because there is a natural order for how they come off. You will want these to cool down because you're going to have to handle them. So if you pull off enough of these and you still struggle getting the ones further down out, you can put it back in the water and cook it some more. So you want that cool a little bit more. The center's a little bit warmer. We got our onions. They've cooled a little bit, but they're still a little warm. That's fine. You just want to be able to handle this. So I'll use the wooden spoon for that. And we're just going to add all the filling ingredients in now. Before this, we need a pound of beef and a pound of pork, which I have ground. I haven't ground them, but I bought them ground. Ground beef and ground pork. Okay. And we need 7 ounces or about a cup of rice. And some dill. So I'm not a huge fan of dill. So it calls for an ounce. This recipe, I'm only doing about half of that. So I'll still get the flavor, but not as strong. And we need some water, a cup of water, which will be useful for the rice. Teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper. So I'm going to just eyeball this. This will be much easier work with your hands, so if the onions have cooled down, and that is preferable. Mine are a little warm still, but not overly warm. And then take this, we're going to put it in the fridge to cool until we're ready for it. While that's going, we're going to work on the sauce that's going to go with it. So for this we need 2 apples, peeled and chopped. So we'll do that. Okay, to these apples we're adding 4 pounds of peeled, chopped, or canned tomatoes. So I bought these tomatoes. These are just whole in juice. I'm just going to rough cut these and put them back in the pot. Alright, to this we're going to add 4 tablespoons of cider vinegar. Half a cup of sugar and 2 tablespoons of honey. So I normally don't put raisins in this, but this recipe does call for half a cup of raisins, so I'm going to try it out and see how it turns out. Alright, half a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and then we're going to put it on the stove and heat it briefly just to get everything combined. Okay, assembly of these is pretty similar to a lot of things that I've been making lately. You want a decent amount, it's about 2 ounces. You want a decent amount in the middle you can wrap around. The larger they are, the more you can fit. And you want to pull it over, tuck in the sides, and then finish rolling it and place it seam side down in the pan. This is the reason why you boil the leaves, is so you can actually do this. When they're larger, when they're more raw, they're much less pliable. They're more likely to break and snap when you try to do this, rather than fold nicely and kind of wrap around the filling. Can be a little bit of pain, but let me see if I have a slightly larger pan. Yeah, this will do better. I can get a few more in here, and if they don't quite take up the whole space, then I can spread them out a little bit. It looks like I'll have a little bit left. I'll just need to cook separately because I don't know that I can get any more leaves out of the cabbage. They're getting small. That fits in there nicely. I'm just going to cover it with the sauce and then cover the whole thing and bake it in the oven at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for about an hour, hour and a half. So for the sauce, I didn't really do much to it. I just heated it up, got it to a little bit of a simmer, and that's how I'm going to put it in. And it looks like the water level is pretty high, the liquid level. So I'm going to put this on a sheet pan as I cook it so that if it overflows, it will not make a mess in the oven. And if I'm going to stick it something like this in the oven, with aluminum foil on it, I find it easier to, if I'm going to use a sheet pan, to just put the aluminum foil on when it's on the sheet pan. And that way I don't have to worry about disturbing it as I lift it. The main goal with this is to have the meat in the center fully cooked, so we're just going to let it go there, use a meat thermometer to check it. Yeah, it definitely cooked a lot more liquid out of the, or within the sauce. So what I'm going to do is use turkey baster to pull some of it out, just so that I don't have to worry about it sloshing about. And there you have it. If you use a bit more, if you just use a normal, like a tomato sauce, instead of the canned or fresh tomatoes, this will be less of an issue because they won't give up as much additional liquid. But there, it's ready for service.